Okay, welcome back into the studio. I did a little bit of the color on here last night, and I found it very, very confusing trying to figure out what I was doing and where I was going. And so I stopped. Last night, I was up half the night, couldn't sleep, thinking about it, and then actually when I did fall asleep, I was painting in my sleep. But by the time I came to the canvas this morning, I had some ideas about what I thought I was going to do. I knew I needed to put some parameters in place to kind of set the reality of this. So I decided that I am going to put the sun in this. I'm going to put the sun down in here somewhere, but it's actually going to look like it's shining through stained glass. And what that allows me to do is to put some parameters then on the birches to say that it's going to be lighter on this side, darker in the middle, and then cool on the back side, just like my usual birches. And so that's, and I'm also decided what I need to do is I need to go and paint in all the sky holes. Now the areas that are going to be suggestive of sky, I need to do that first to kind of give me a roadmap of where the other shapes are. But at least now I've asked some of the questions and come up with answers. So I am going to have a light source, and it's going to get it's going to be very light and warm in here and get darker and cooler as we come out, kind of everything is. So that now gives me some things I can hang my hat on to make decisions. So I just thought I would kind of stop at this point and kind of let you know what my thought process is. But I'll come back probably in an hour and a half or so. I have some ideas about putting the sun in, but I'm going to play with that, and then we'll see how that goes. Okay, so that's about 2 days of painting in the sky. And you can see that it's starting to take shape now. I know a little bit more about what I want to do here now. See, I've put in kind of like the glow area here of the sun shining through, and every one of these little panels is in between the lines, but each one has a slight gradation that goes from like a pink to an orange, or from a light turquoisey green to a yellowy green. So all of those, there's slight gradation and all of that. And it's just starting to take structure for me. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to have to repaint this area here. I don't like that at all. But I decided, that this was kind of overwhelming for me. So the first thing to do was, okay, paint everything that's going to appear kind of like the sky. And I have these triangle shapes here that are going to be reminiscent of leaves. And then we have our vertical shapes, which are the trees. And so, yeah, that's basically it for now. But sometimes when you're doing these kinds of things, you just have to invest the time. I knew what I wanted to do in terms of painting all of these panels that are kind of like the sky, but it's basically 2 days of painting to get there. Now I have to decide about the colors I'm going to use in these verticals. And I used to say to my students when I was teaching a lot that I would rather have a spectacular failure than a mediocre success. And so I'm still hopeful that this painting is going to turn out to be a great piece, but if it doesn't, they used to always ask me, what's a spectacular failure? Well, this would be a spectacular failure. I'm already 3 days in, and normally a painting this size would take me 2 to 3 days. This is probably going to take me another couple days, and still I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants in terms of I don't really know yet in my mind what this finished painting is going to look like. So if it doesn't turn out, then that's a spectacular failure. But sometimes you need those spectacular failures because that's where you learn. Painting is just as much about knowing what not to do next time as it is about a painting just flowing from start to finish. So I'm going to do a little thinking, and I'll start to have to decide whether I'm going to paint the tree shapes first or these leaf type shapes first. But when we come back, you'll see what I've decided. Welcome back. It looks very different now than it did last time we saw it. And I'm happy to say that I've turned the corner from being overwhelmed with so many decisions to make to now having narrowed it down to have made a few firm decisions and just following along with that. And that's the thing when you're in process mode. Normally when you're painting in a way that you're used to painting, where you're competent and confident in there, you already have a lot of firmly held beliefs about what you're going to do, what the painting's going to look like at the various stages, and what are the steps that you're going to take. When you're in process, you have no firmly held beliefs and no decisions made yet. So everything is kind of up in the air, which makes for potentially millions of different decisions, depending on which ones you make for which items in there.
And so for here, I'll go through right now the kind of the decision-making process that it took me to kind of get to where I am now. So I initially started doing some painting up here and then just wasn't happy with it. So I thought I stopped that. And again, I was just overwhelmed by all these lines and shapes here. So I thought I need to break it down into kind of a process that I can do in steps. So I thought first everything, so I thought I'm going to have trees, shapes. I'm going to have these shapes here that are kind of reminiscent of leaves kind of floating in front. And there's going to be this distant kind of a horizon of a hill back here. So right off the bat, I said everything above this hill shape that's not a leaf or a tree is going to be the lighter color indicating the sky. So that right off the bat, that's a huge decision. It means now all of those shapes are going to be kind of in a very, very light value. And then all I had to do, then I also made the decision that within each shape it was going to gradate from one color or one value to another. So it would go from pink to kind of a peach, from a turquoise to more of a yellowy green. And that it also, that I realized I wanted the impression of the sun shining down here. So that was going to be my lightest area of sky and my lightest area of anything else that was in here. And also with these kind of lines that almost represent like the leading in a stained glass window, they are going to get bleached out closer to the sun and radiate out as well. So those were the first decisions I made. And then I spent basically a little over a day painting in all of these sky shapes. And I made a few times too. I had to go back and wipe areas out because I found I was painting in leaf shapes because it was very confusing. And once I had the sky kind of blocked in and the glow of the sun, which is where we were last time, it was time to start painting the trees. And initially I had a lot of little shapes in here. And I looked back at the sketches that I'd done that I really liked, and I realized that in the tree shapes, the shapes were generally longer, not so little. And I thought that's also going to make that stand out from the sky if these shapes here are bigger. And then in terms of color and value, it's like, well, as we get closer to the sun, they're going to be lighter and warmer. And as we move further away, they're going to be darker and cooler generally. And so I just started doing that one shape at a time and just kind of randomly alternating from one color to another, just in terms of trying to make this look pleasing. And I also decided that I was going to try and break up the lines coming through the trees here where they touch, so we weren't going to get a line continuing through both trees, that it was going to stop to make it look like one of these was in front of the other. And then worked over to here, and then this one here. And so that's basically, you know, that's the last 2 days of painting, is the sky and then these tree shapes. But now I know where I'm going with this, because basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to finish all of these other vertical shapes that are going to be suggestive of tree shapes, and doing the same thing that I'm doing now. As we get further away from the sun, they get darker. I also thought down here I'll make them lighter, because I'm going to maybe make the background darker than them, so these will go from dark against light to light against dark, which is an interesting transition. And then once I've finished all of the tree shapes, then I have to decide what to do about these leaf shapes and what I'm going to do down here about the hill. And I haven't made any firm decisions about that yet. I don't need to. All I need to do is to continue working away at what I know is the next step, which is blocking in the rest of these verticals that are going to suggest trees. So that's where it is now, and that's been kind of the thought process. But there were so many different decisions I could have made. I could have had all of these lines continue through the trees. I could have had the trees broken up into tiny little shapes like this. If I didn't put the sun in here, then it's really arbitrary in terms of what values and colors. Actually, putting the sun in there actually made it a little easier for me, because then I had, okay, I've got a firm plan on this side of the trees towards the sun. Wherever it's the side towards the sun, it's going to be lighter. So that actually made it a little easier. And so making each decision you make makes the next decision a little easier. And then once I'm done this, actually, I could paint another painting like this very easily, because now I have a plan about how to do it. And I guess that's the thing too, when you step out of your comfort zone when you're in process. If you're trying to paint like someone else has already established as a method of painting, even that can be difficult, but at least you have like a roadmap of you do this step, then you do this step, then you do that step. When you're kind of inventing your own process and you're really just kind of throwing everything out there as a possibility, there's no roadmap, And so you never know for sure, whether you're on the right track or wrong track, and there's so many different decisions to make. But that's the beauty of it. In a way, it's like playing jazz, where you're just reacting to what's already on here, as opposed to, if you're painting a representational picture, it's like classical music. The image is already there. You know what you're going to paint. You're just executing it. And there might be a little bit of stylistic difference, from what the actual subject is. But then when you're painting like this, it's jazz. It's just you have no idea where it's going. You have no idea where it's going to take you. And that's the beauty of it. The only problem is when you're in process mode, you have a much higher rate of failure. And that's just the way it is, because you don't know what you're doing. So again, it's really important to understand that. And I actually think now, there was a time when I thought this piece was kind of, you're trying to steer the piece, and it kept wanting to go into the ditch. I'm pretty sure now I've wrestled it out of the ditch, and I think I'm actually very excited about how it's going to turn out. So anyways, I'll get back to work, and I'll come back when we've got the rest of all of these tree shapes blocked in.